Okay, so we're going to take our cardstock. This is 5.5 by 8.5, so an 8.5 by 11 cut in half, and just fold that in half. So this is the base card for our lantern. My paper folds fine without a bone folder and scoring. And then set that aside. All right. Next, you're going to, my paper is sort of, there is a front and a back, but it's very subtle. So I don't think you'll be able to see it. But you want to have your paper face down. And then we're going to do 2 folds lengthwise. So you might want to use a ruler or your cutting mat to line things up. Now, I had to make this several times to figure it out, so don't feel pressured like you have to get this perfect. And I actually made a model here. I'm not sure you can see all of the dimensions, but everything I'm telling you is on this. So a 1/2 inch up from the bottom edge, I'm just going to draw my line. You could score it. You don't need to draw it, but it will be on the inside. So I'm just doing it so you can see it. So I'm going to make that fold. And then this, by the way, all the dimensions were in the instruction. 10.5 by 4.25. So these measurements that I'm telling you are really based on this size. If you wanted to do it another size, that's certainly possible, but you would have to figure out the dimensions. So now we're going to go 1 inch, 1.25 inches from the top edge down. I've got this ruler that has measurements. I'm going to double check here on my cutting mat. So 1.25. Okay, and then I'm going to fold along that line. You can score it, or you can just fold it. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over. I mean, it's still face down, but I'm going to orient it. So give me a thumbs up if you've done that. Are you with me?
Helen, there's interest in that paper. What kind is it?
Oh, I knew that was going to be. From Washi Arts. You can get it from Washi Arts, washiarts.com. I'm not sure they have this paper on their website. They may. And I did mean to ask Linda there. I think it's called Wave. It has Wave in the name. Can you see that subtle wave?
Yes.
Okay, so the dimension, this is 1/2 inch and 1.25 inch. All right, now we're going to move to folding the short dimension. And we're going to do 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to say on the left side. So now I'm deciding which side is which. So 1/2 inch on the left. By the way, sometimes I use my mechanical pencil as a bone folder. I just put the lead in and use it as a scoring tool. Here we go. So keep that last fold folded in or refold it. Now you're going to take the right side and fold over to the left. So up to the edge of that folded over flap. And I'm going to fold it in half again. Okay, so now I have 4 equal sections plus my seam in that direction. So it's starting to make our box. So now we're going to cut the semicircles. So these are semicircles at the top. So hopefully you pulled out your compass. So now this is the important thing. Unfold that flap on the side. And then fold in half again. So the same thing, but you need that flap open. So we are going to set our compass at 1 1/4 inches. So it's the same dimension of this top fold over. And you're going to put it on. So here you can see how I've drawn it here. You're going to, so here's my fold line, my 1 1/4 inch down fold line. I'm going to mark the center, which should be 1 1/4 inches. So I'm going to set my compass here, and I'm going to draw that semicircle. I'm sorry, my pencil is kind of light. I'll go over. And it should just go right up to the top. Okay, now I'm going to take scissors. You could use an Exacto knife. And here's my model again. So now see, I've only drawn that there. You could draw it 4 times and cut them out, but I'm going to cut through all layers at one time. And this tab is going to cut off. So watch what I do. And now I'm going to cut that tab. Okay, you could actually miter it, which is what we'll do in a minute. Okay, so now I'm going to open everything back up. And this is where you can make mistakes. So I think you should actually draw with me what I'm doing. Okay, so this is going, let me just show you first. This is going to be a flap with mitered corners. This is going to be cut away. This is going to be another flap with the corners. This is going to be cut away. And then there's a flap here. So we have 3 flaps. And then this will be cut away. Okay, so if you can see this and follow this, go for it. And I am going to just do the same thing. So I'm going to mark, these are the lines I'm going to cut. And they don't have to be perfect. These are going to be hidden underneath. So I'm not measuring. And then I'm going to do my next flap here. And then I have a flap here. And I've already mitered that, but if you didn't. So it's just an angled corner. I don't know if miter is the right word in paper engineering. Okay, and then I'm going to put an X through here. So I remember I'm cutting this out. I'm cutting this out. I'm going to cut that square. And then if you still have this here, you're cutting that out. And then hopefully I won't make a mistake. So now I'm just going to use scissors. So I'm cutting just up to that line, that first fold line. You could use an Exacto. I'm going to do all the diagonals first. And I am going to take my ruler to cut. So I like to cut this way so I can see what I'm cutting. Like if this ruler wasn't clear, I wouldn't have been able to see that the other way I had it oriented. So cut that off. Cut that off. All right, so that's what I've got now. So we're going to need glue next. Yay, Nancy. I'm going to use glue stick. Yoo-hoo is an archival glue. You can use PVA, like a liquid white glue. And you could also use double-sided tape. So now I am going to fold. So the first thing I'm going to glue is this tab on the side. So I want to just make sure that I have the outside of my paper on the outside of the box shape, if you have a front or a back. At this point, you might want to also quickly erase any lines. I don't have my best eraser right here. Okay, so I'm going to put glue here. And you might just want to take some scrap paper, put it underneath, and just get glue on that flap. And then the edge without the seam is going to line up with that flap. And now I've made a box, and it should fold. It's going to have to collapse, so it's important that everything's lined up correctly. And I collapse it pretty quickly so that the glue can move a little bit if it needs to. Okay, I'm going to glue this in first. So the way this is going to glue in is that same 1 1/4 inches. We're going to measure from the center fold of the card over 1 1/4 inches and draw a little guideline. And that guideline, I glued this in just by eye, but if you want to be really accurate, our little box is 2 1/2 inches, and this is 5 1/2 inches. So 1 1/2 inches from either end. Look at that. I drew it almost exactly the right length. Okay, cool. So 1 1/2 inches down to 1 1/2 inches up to center it. Now this would be something where this could be, you could do something different than I'm doing. You could not center it, but we're going to center it today. So I've got my guideline, and I am going to glue one flap. It doesn't matter which one, which way you have this. And I'm going to draw a little line, a guideline, so you can see what I'm doing. I'm gluing it here. So this is my 1 1/4 inch line. I'm gluing it inside of that. So I'm going to put glue on one of the tabs. It could be either one because this is symmetrical. It could flip-flop either way. So I've got glue here, and I'm going to put it down into that spot. And I want to make sure I can fold it over like this so that I get that line fairly straight. And you really want to make sure that glue sets. So press down, but also lift up and make sure no glue oozed out and you're not gluing something you didn't want to. So this should move freely. Now there's a couple ways you could do this. If you are a paper engineer, you might do it a different way than me. Okay, so now, so this is what we've got. We've got our box just on one tab. By the way, I have Duncan Birmingham's book on pop-ups, and I took his, has a bunch of different, I don't know the names, box mechanisms. So I took his basic mechanism and then put a top on it and did some variations. So that's a great pop-up book. So look what I'm going to do. So I'm going to try to open this and hold it. So I'm going to push in from the sides and collapse this. And what's going to happen is I'm going to get a fold right in the middle of each of these. And it's really easy to do. It looks scary, but as long as I line up my one box on top of the other as I push it down. So I'm keeping those, I've just got the same pattern right underneath, keeping everything aligned. When I do that, it will collapse exactly where it needs to. Oh yeah, thanks Jade. Duncan Birmingham has a great YouTube channel with lots of tutorials. Okay, let me do this again. So you have just your box there. And I'm going to turn it so it's oriented this way towards me. And what I'm doing is pushing these two sides in, but I'm doing that flat so that I can then press it down, and it's like a squash fold in origami. And that's so this will collapse, okay? And by the way, in the Paper Year online classroom, the tutorials are pre-recorded. It is not live. The only live thing are the Zoom meetings monthly. So if you're in the all-in plan, you'll have video that is pre-recorded, and you can stop and start, go back as many times as you want. So now I need to glue this tab over here. So I've got my collapsed object, right? And I'm going to slip a piece of scrap paper underneath this second tab that is not glued. And I'm going to put glue there. Remove this scrap paper. So now I've got glue here. There. I'm just going to close my card, and that's going to make that glue in place. So you want to make sure you really press that glue so that it sticks down. Okay, so now you can test out the box top. You know, like moving boxes, how you fold one flap down, then the next one, then the next one, and then the last one tucks underneath the first. So that is the closure for our lantern. Okay, so now we're going to put the light inside. Thanks, Gina. So I need to collapse it again. By the way, you can collapse it the other way if for any reason you wanted to. So look, check it out. You've already got all the folds to do this. So it could collapse this way. And it still folds up to be the same thing. And you could leave, that's kind of interesting looking. You could leave that poking out the top, or when this is folded, so you can't collapse this with the box structure with the top in place. Maybe you could. I haven't tried that. My intention was that you would take it apart. So you can fold these back and tuck that back in. Or you could tuck them inside of the box. So now if you have a tea light, this is the last thing. I'm gonna center it more or less. Let's see. Yeah, I've got that centered, and I'm centering it halfway on my card. And I'm going to trace the outline. I'd rather do that to get the right size than a tiny circle like that with my compass. Feels trickier. So this is a packaging technique. I'm sure you've seen this to hold round objects in place. So just watch what I do, and then you can do it. So I'm going to cut up to my line that I've drawn through the center. So now I've got 2 halves. I want 3 or 4 cuts. So I'm going to divide each of those halves, or the really quarters of my semicircle, into 3. So hopefully you can see that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And now is in the center so that it will, I'm not cutting any of my box. See how it's in the center there? So if you moved your box, like I was talking about, thinking outside of the box and doing something different, you would need to make sure you put this in the right place. Okay, now I've got all of those little whatever they are. I'm gonna illuminate my tea light and press this onto it. And so the thing that's really exciting, this is where I was so excited, is that it holds the paper flat. So when you put the tea light in there, it makes this really flat and rigid. And then you can go back in. And close your box top. I need to erase that pencil line there. But there it is, the pop-up lantern, to bring us some brightness for the new year. Look at that beautiful light. I'm just going to show a couple of other variations that I did when I was designing the project. So this one has pointy edges. It doesn't fold up the same way, but it's just a fun shape. And I love the house shape. So it's kind of like a house. And then here's, I was just thinking, you know, shaping the top edge. So that's just a different shape, almost like a building. This is just a shorter one. I started out with just a hole in the middle, which is, you know, I think I figured out right away that what the solution was. It's not quite big enough. You can vary the size. This is 8.5 by 11 folded in half with a taller lantern and a double-sided paper, which is kind of fun. You see that? Have a great rest of your day, a great new year, and shine your light. Bye.